Fisher. I'm the publisher of Inside Unmanned Systems, and we are broadcasting semi-live from the show floor at Exponential in Houston, Texas. And I have as our guest Mr. Mike Horton, Chief Executive Officer of GEODNET. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me again.
We are delighted you are here, and we interviewed Mike a year ago, and he was in the midst of a very explicit and clearly defined mission, and that is to bring RTK to bear to the UAS and industrial robotics and unmanned and autonomy markets. And he's been hard at work, so we're checking in with Mike to find out just how goes the battle and to talk about some of the finer points and details of why RTK and UAS are a marriage made in heaven. Mike.
Yeah, well, it's great to be back, Richard, and I think last time when we were here last year at Exponential, we had about 5,000 stations online. We've grown now to over 17,000 registered triple frequency, multi-constellation RTK base stations with about 15,000 online at any point in time. So network growth has been phenomenal, as well as user growth in the UAS and industrial robotics community. So really exciting times for the GEODNET network.
Well, that is some astonishing growth, Mike. So what do you attribute that kind of orders of magnitude growth in the past 12 months?
Yeah, I think it's really a two-sided system. So on the one side, you have demand from the Web3 marketplace to find projects that can be deployed easily, that then have a token, crypto token element to it, and GEODNET has really hit kind of the nail on the head there. And then on the demand side, I think drone operations as well as robots, physical AI, this whole thing is just really taking off, no pun intended. And we've announced a number of important drone customers since we met last year, including Propeller and Drone Deploy, who's here, just spoke with, and smaller customers like Texas Drone, 910 Drones, Rock Robotic, many drone users every day on the network.
And Mike, to be clear about those customers, these are different. These are clearly enterprise customers. Could you describe to our audience what that kind of enterprise customer relationship is with GEODNET and what the primary points of value are?
Yeah, so enterprise customers like to use RTK for photogrammetry, LiDAR mapping, drone delivery, drone-in-a-box solutions. They need that hyper-precise precision that a GEODNET can provide, the 1 centimeter XYZ positioning, whether it's just for improving the flyability of the drone or it's for specific operational requirements like a drone delivery or a drone scanning, drone mapping. That's really, they like to tie into that. We support all the major coordinate frames. We support PPK workflows as well as RTK workflows, integrated with all the different receiver manufacturers very seamlessly. So it's a pretty easy end experience, and we offer resellers of our network, which are a lot of the different drone solution providers and distributors, a revenue share. So it's usually a 50-50 revenue share. The foundation itself being a Web3 protocol, it doesn't really reach out directly to customers. It works with enterprises as a platform provider for them to provide their own RTK service. So, I was just meeting with one of our customers, Texas Drones. They've rebranded the service for their marketplace RTK USA, which I thought was a really fun, simple name. They have a great little sticker for it, and they're busy working with customers in mining as well as construction on traditional drone scanning things, but all those customers just want something simple, ready to use, and they can provide that on top of the GEODNET platform.
Yeah, and I think that's the clever part, or the real kind of value driver for GEODNET. and from where I sit, the success that you've had, I mean, you're really kind of foundational. You're part of the infrastructure. Almost, you know, part of becoming the protocol.
Yeah,
where,
that's right.
Where you're agnostic in terms of the user communities.
Right.
You cite, and you know that nobody goes it alone, and GeoDNet is collaborative by nature, and it enables others to be a collaborative
business
themselves.
partner. Yeah, exactly.
And that's
build on top
and I
of
think
it.
that's really smart. But I do know that there's been some additional developments in this device that you brought with us today.
Yeah.
And you're taking very much the same kind of model
Yeah.
and adding some additional layers of data.
Yes.
So talk to us about that,
Yeah,
Mike.
so one of the things in the drone and UAS community that's really exciting is beyond visual line of sight operations, and also sort of airspace security and safety and interoperability between unmanned systems and manned systems. And for that, there are a couple of really important standards. One is ADS-B, and this base station that we developed at the GeoDNet Foundation, along with our hardware manufacturing partner, supports another deep-end decentralized physical infrastructure network called WingBits. And I think WingBits has a very unique value proposition in the drone UAS community with their international ADS-B network. So this node tracks both ADS-B and RTK, and then there'll be a firmware update coming along the way that will add drone remote ID. And definitely out here on the show floor today, talking to a lot of different people in the drone industry, remote ID is really coming of age. I think it was highlighted in the keynote speech for the conference.
Right.
The adoption of remote ID as a means to, you know, help people identify where drones are and you know, provide law enforcement the tools they need when drones are kind of misbehaving, so to speak.
Yeah. So, what's your view of that market? What's the kind of addressable market in your view longer term, and where are you getting some immediate market uptake?
Well, I think that, you know, with our partner WingBits and GeoDNet combination really does address some of the airspace concerns, and we're seeing a lot of interest from people who are putting together kind of airspace management tools where they're integrating multiple disparate sources of data, including ADS-B, ground radar, remote ID, and, you know, WingBits, GeoDNet acts as a good feed for that. I think in terms of resilient PNT, it's going to be really important because these technologies also kind of offer as a sensor really for the health of the PNT network, which is so critically important for all kinds of infrastructure, not just, you know, GPS on your phone, but also data centers, telecommunication networks. So having a network that can kind of identify where there is sources of interference or spoofing going on and pinpoint that, I think it's going to be a lot of value. And I think the integration of ADS-B, remote ID, and RTK all into one kind of network together is a super interesting value proposition that we combined with the WingBits projects offer, and something I've been talking to a number of people at the show about, and, you know, getting a lot of good response on.
I bet. I mean, adding that ADS-B layer and the remote ID is really interesting, particularly given the fact that much of the critical infrastructure is a lot, really needs that GNSS resilience, and many of the operational environments that these platforms, these aircraft are going to ostensibly be operating in, whether it's last mile delivery, whether it's survey mapping, long linear inspection, matters not. But what we do know is that with a GeoDNet solution, with that combined layered stack, you have the ability to deliver a far more resilient PNT solution, which also means, to connect the dots for people, that it also means that your ConOps are different, your mission sets are different, your flight duration is longer. You don't necessarily have constraints, whether it be a multipath environment like an urban canyon or even foliage in some of these other applications. What do you think about that?
I think all that, yeah, totally agree. And I think a big driver, and one of the big things I've taken from the show, is I do think now Part 108, we talked about it last year, it was coming. Now you really have clear line of sight to Part 108 rolling out.
Indeed.
And you do see folks great conversation with some of the folks in drone delivery, some of the household names, and this, and they are going from a couple cities to, you know, all-out deployment, and it's just going to happen. You know, it's just going to really happen now. Trump administration's reviewing the documents. I think it'll be done by end of year, early next year, I think. What do you think, Richard? I mean,
we think it may. Yeah, that's our assessment. I mean, Part 108. Was up at OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and then that was then they had a change of administration, and India essentially had a reset, so you had to begin. But much of that work had been already done, and consensus was formed on lots of things. So we're looking forward to it. We've been covering this for 11 years now, and we've never been closer. But we're not there yet, Mike. So I'm not gonna wager a bet or a comment other than to say we are ready, willing, able, and highly supportive of that.
Yeah, it's coming.
We think it's
I
going to
think
explode.
it's really close. It's going to explode the market.
Yeah, it's going to explode the market and grow it exponentially. So too, talking about Part 108, and to the extent you talked about drone delivery and drone delivery, the art form, you know, last mile is a different beast, isn't it? First mile, the mid mile, and last mile, but last mile is the most expensive. It's frequently the most dangerous and the most complicated, and that's where you have been pretty vocal and active about positioning GEODNET as an enabler of not just drone delivery, but other kind of industrial robotics, including humanoid, including the idea that so you're talking about ADSB and remote ID and RTK, GEODNET. Think then about, you know, physical AI, and think about humanoid robotics, and being able to be this kind of enabler of, you know, safe and robust and highly accurate industrial robotics, and, you know, whether it's delivering packages or working in a closed environment or whatever. So talk to us a little bit about your vision for that, and how you see GEODNET really being a driver of enabling PNT technology. Yeah,
well, we're really in the big picture trying to go is enabling these precise operations, and then allowing people to build on top of that to all the way through a full robotic stack. So something like, you know, Rover Labs that we've Web3 partnership, kind of similar to Wingbits, using the GEODNET RTK network for LiDAR plus camera scanning. This is creating foundational data products for physical AI, for robotic platforms. I think it's just now becoming so practical. The compute's there, the sensors there, and the timing's there from a regulatory and from a need point of view to really enable a lot of robotic solutions, both in the air with drones, but also on the ground and in the home and in the factory. And I think that the deepen model, where you have a collective and a community that can help build all the technology and the learning to do that, is a powerful kind of meta for the space, and we're definitely leaning into all those different types of applications across all the different, you know, modalities.
Boy, that's exciting. We just did the last issue of Inside Unmanned Systems, talking a lot about AI-enabled autonomy, talking about physical AI, and what you're telling me is that you've got this deepen model that is going to drive adoption and democratize, essentially, physical AI raw data sets that then developers and integrators can build solutions on top of. But you're taking it upon yourself, you and your cohorts have decided that the feature extraction, the perception sensor, the more data that exists in a physical AI environment, the better off we're going to be in terms of navigation, safety, all those things.
And the speed at which this technology can develop when there's community effort is just so much faster. You look at GEODNET, tripling the number of stations in 1 year. When you talk about physical things that are geospatially decentralized, to try to do it any other way is just crazy expensive. Even for the big mega hyperscaler companies, it's really difficult because you can't do it.
And even if you can, it's too expensive.
It's super expensive. And I wanted to point out that being able to tie it back to a truth network that gives you that absolute accuracy, which is what RTK really does, and when you start to complement it with low Earth orbit satellites, it's just going to get better and better. But that absolute nature of positioning through RTK is so powerful. I like to think of it myself, man, if I could just remember where everything is, my life would be so much more efficient. And that's what GEODNET does. It gives a robot the ability to remember it can see, it can sense, it has a LiDAR, it has a camera, it can determine all these things, but we're giving it the ability to put those things in the absolute Earth-centered coordinate frame to 1 centimeter accuracy, and it can just remember everything. And then it can share it with its robot friends. The power of that is way superhuman. We as humans I can't remember what room I'm in the hotel, right? A robot has no problem doing that, but it needs that absolute truth in order to make that really, really useful. And that's the power that GEODNET provides us, kind of a very foundational level for all these things above it, giving it that absolute reference coordinate. Yeah,
and so that really brings it back to the core kind of technical and business case that GEODNET has been making to the UAS community. And from where I sit and what I believe is, I think you're going to likely see that same rate of scale and build out in the other DPIN models that you're using. But specifically back to UAS and RTK, what are how can people be certain with GEODNET? What about the quality assurance? What about the quality control? What about because kind of traditional RTK networks or CORS networks, this is a completely different model, and I think there's some questions about, hey, is this data reliable? Is this data accurate?
Right.
Is it accuracy is great as long as it's correct,
right?
And so what are you doing, or what kind of support, what kind of QC, QA do you provide your user communities so that they have absolute faith and confidence in the data sets? Can you talk a little bit about that, Mike?
So we've done a lot to build out a really transparent system where you have access to a lot more data about the stations than you would on any other network, including all the important fundamental metrics in terms of epic availability, cycle slips, multipath indications. All that's available to our enterprise customers through our API, and I don't believe that is true for any other network on the planet.
So fully open
really,
kimono, and here it is.
Here it is.
And Mike, what advantage does that create for your users?
Well, it allows them to understand the verifiability and the quality of the data that they are getting, and not just sort of look at it and hope for the best. And while these other networks may claim they're better in reliability, they're not providing the transparency to back it up. And we are. And I think that there are plenty of customers who've told us about this problem or that problem with the sort of traditional brand name solutions out there.
Sure.
Where, they say that it's a totally different model, but at the end of the day, they don't own the real estate. 90% of the cases, they don't own the real estate that they're putting the station on.
No.
They don't own the power network.
No.
They don't own the telecommunication network. So they have the same dependencies that something like a GEODNET station would be. And that's where most of the issues come in. It is typically power or internet that gets you, and those are things we all depend on. So having more redundancy, having more transparency is really the best tools you have to understand the quality that you're getting and make the appropriate decisions. Quality is different for different requirements.
Indeed.
If you're doing a consumer application, you have a different requirement than if you're doing something that's going to impact national security. So people need to make those trade-offs, and to make those trade-offs correctly, you need transparency, and that's what our mission is to provide.
Yeah, great point. And depending upon the user community that you're talking to, what are the qualities of precision that they're looking for that are going to create value for their customer base. And I would actually make the observation that your kind of approach to transparency and providing those data sets actually encourages additional innovation.
It does.
Because they then have the ability to get behind the veil, understand precisely what those data sets can and cannot do, and innovate and build solutions on top of that.
And that's what people are doing. I mean, people are
That's
using.
cool, Mike.
Yeah, and people
Hey,
use
has
our
anybody
data.
ever told you your stuff's cool?
Yeah,
GEODNET's
thank you,
pretty
Richard.
cool.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun.
Wow.
And people are using our stuff for safety critical things. We don't.
Amazing.
You know, we don't, as a foundation, as a crypto organization that's building out this network, we can't do that ourselves. We do that with partners. They take the data,
Wow.
they're able
Yep.
to process it, they're able to look at the metrics they have, and they're able to do something like an ASPICE. We can't do that as a foundation. So it gives a lot of opportunity, a lot of room for other people to build on top of what GeoDNet's doing.
This is the future, people. The future is here, and that the future brought to you by Mike Horton at GEODNET.
Wow.
I want to thank Mike today for his time, for his insights. It's always a pleasure, Mike.
Thank you, Richard. And
yeah.
I always got to remember, I got to thank the community. I mean, these stations are put up by individual people who want to participate in the network, who want to earn GOD token rewards, and it's important to realize that it's really a community effort that's been building this incredible asset and resource for positioning for UAS out. It's a big thanks to the community for supporting us.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, the power of that statement is in, and the power of the model is in that very idea of that contributive, decentralized, democratized kind of solution. And then, oddly, at the same time, it's been really good for the market.
Yeah.
And good for the build out. And look at areas of geographic super low density on networks. So you've solved those problems. And
Yeah.
guess what? Lots of people had opportunities to solve that problem many times, many years, but they didn't.
It's all about aligning incentives, I think. That's
So
the
you
core.
and your community are doing that, and you're in process. Amazing stuff. Congratulations
Thanks,
on the
Richard.
fine work, Mike. Keep it up. And from Exponential in Houston, Texas, we'll see you next time.